It's my privilege to welcome Dr. Sri Lakshmi. Dr. Sri Lakshmi completed her PhD in Electrical Engineering from IIT Bombay. Currently, she is an assistant professor in Electrical Engineering Department of NIT Calicut. Her research interests include bidirectional high-gain DC-DC converters for electronics application in electrical drives. She worked as visiting faculty in VJIT Bombay in 2017. After she joined as ad hoc faculty in NIT Calicut, she has 3 IEEE transactions and 2 patents. She received DST Inspire Faculty Award in the year 2019 by Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, Kirtana. I'll share my slides.
Good afternoon, everybody.
So I hope my screen is visible now. Yes. Are you able to see my screen? I have shared the screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and I'm audible too.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, one and all. At the beginning, I extend my gratitude to the organizers of this FTP for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with all of you. So the topic which we are going to discuss in this afternoon session is the fast charging challenges when it comes to the electric vehicle applications. So we'll just quickly see the introduction of this. And the presentation content will have this following flow. First, I'll just give a brief introduction, and then we'll just see the history of electric vehicles, its evolution, etc. Then we'll see what stopped the electric vehicles from actually being the one of the very important part of the transportation sector. So what are the challenges which had stopped the electric vehicles? Then we'll see some charging methods, charging algorithms, what are the energy storage which can be used in electric vehicles. Then we'll come to the newly developed energy storage devices, which is called as supercapacitors. When we try to make a supercapacitor bank, or maybe a storage bank with battery cells, what are the balancing issues? What are the main issues we are facing, and how to solve those issues will be taken up in the coming slides. So you all may be very much aware of these things, but just to start with, we have different types of electric vehicles. Hybrid electric vehicle have become popular these days. With pure electric vehicle, which is battery powered electric vehicles, are also getting developed nowadays, which does not have any IC engine in it. So hybrid electric vehicles are those which may have both IC engine as well as the electric motor. Then there are plug-in electric vehicles, plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So all these have been developed. We are developing these technologies nowadays, and these are on focus now mainly because of the reduced emissions. We are thinking about the energy efficiency as well as the environment now. So because of all these reasons, these are being developed. And also now, if we compare the price of the gasoline with that of the electrical power, the electrical power has become much cheaper, and because the electric vehicles became more adaptable now. And they are noise free. That is yet another very important part of electric vehicle. So when we compare it with the gasoline, at this point, we find a lot of advantages for electric vehicles, and that is why the whole focus is getting shifted towards electric vehicle. So what are the problems when we move? We want to now think of replacing the IC engine based vehicles completely with electric vehicle. So when we think of that kind of a transition, which will appear as a very huge transition, the main problem or main concern is that of the charging time. So in the case of an IC engine based vehicle, we can actually go to a gasoline station, fill the tank and come out maybe within 2 to 3 minutes if there is no rush. And that process was very simple. But when it comes to an electric vehicle, we need to charge a battery. So if that charging takes a longer duration than what it takes to fill a tank, it is going to affect the complete transition from IC engine to electric vehicle, right? So the main challenge with the electric vehicle sector now is with the charging. The drive system, the development of the motor controllers are also there, but they have actually matured. We have a very good drive systems. We have very good motors available, which can give a good power output, and there are good power electronic converters, controls for the drive of to develop the drive system for these motors. So that part is actually very much matured now. But what is lacking here is the capability of charging the battery in very less amount of time, or the main challenge is to make the time comparable to that of a gasoline filling station. Okay, so what we aim at is actually for doing a fast charging. Okay, so we want to reduce the charging time and we want to make it fast. So when we just look at the brief evolution of electric vehicles, we can see that the first ever vehicle made in 1881 or so was an electric vehicle. Okay, so when people started to move from one place to another, and after the development of wheels and there were carts by animals and all, then the motorized idea of having a motorized motion was first implemented through an electric vehicle itself. So the idea of having an electric motor driving a vehicle or driving a wheel is not a very new idea. That was already there in 1881. But at that time, we did not have much choices for the motor. We did not have much choices for the storage unit. So all these technologies were very much immature. So if you see the range of the vehicle at that time, it was really very small. So that actually made this electric vehicle technology slightly questionable for a long distance transportation and all. But still, they were used until 1990s, after which the IC engine based vehicles became more economical, or the availability of the fuels for the IC engine vehicle increased. And because of that, there was a drastic shift from the electric vehicle industry to the IC engine industry. And now, in 2020, we are thinking about moving back towards the electric vehicle. But now, the advantage which we have is that we are moving to the old technology with a better, matured technical background now. So what we have in our hand is a new kind of, very much new kind of machines. It's drive systems, which can actually give us the power ratings, which is capable of giving a very good power rating to the vehicle. And we have good battery technologies, good storage technologies. We have developed a lot of power electronic circuits, its control. So all these have actually matured enough. And with this good technology, we are moving back to our old electric vehicle system, thinking that we'll be able to get a better hand on it now. So when we come to the charging of electric vehicle, which I told is the major challenge with the electric vehicle, we can divide the charging into three levels basically. So they are level 1, level 2, and level 3, as you can see. So the level 1 charging is like the home charging at home or at office. So we use the power supply available at our home or at office, and we can make use of that to charge the battery in the electric for the electric vehicle. So the kind of vehicle which we can charge, it should not, the charging time will be large. So the rating of that vehicle should not be very high. Okay, so the vehicles up to 50 kilowatt range may be charged with the level 1 charging. And then we have level 2 charging, which is also on the level 1 charger. If you see, they are on-board charger. So the charger here will be on board. The complete charging unit, the charging converters, etc., will be on the vehicle. That is because if you see, the charging time is large, so the power rating of the charger will be less. So they are less bulky and they'll be present on board. Okay. Then for level 2 as well, what we think of is to have an onboard charging with the capability of connecting to 3-phase also. And it may be like charging from a public outlet, like from a place or from a common public place like a shopping mall, or where you are trying to just park the vehicle for some time. So here the charging time is slightly reduced to around 2 to 6 hours for the case of 32 ampere system. And if you are going for an 80 ampere charger, it will come down to around 2 to 3 times. So that may be taken as an average time you'll be spending at one public outlet. And during that time, if you plug in the vehicle, it will get charged completely. So all the medium-sized vehicles can use this level 2 kind of chargers, and they can prefer with this charging from public outlets. Then comes the level 3 charging, which is a focus of this session, where we are thinking about having a very fast charging, fast enough so that it gets charged within 0.4 to 1 hour duration. Okay, so it is like we get it charged in 10 to 15 minutes. So the amount of current which it has to take will be huge, will be around 200 amperes or so. And they cannot have an onboard charger, because the onboard charger becomes very bulky. So what we will have here is an off-board charger. The charger will be there in the charging station itself, and we will try to make it fast enough, and the voltage rating which we will be using at the charging station will also be larger, so as to make the current level less. Okay, so that are the different charging techniques, charging levels which we can have. And what we want to develop is this level 3 charging technique, because that is what we want it to be comparable with the gasoline charging station, with the one where we just go in, charge, and come out. Okay, so this is the main focus, where we have a very huge current being taken from the grid, and we are trying to charge it in the minimum time. Okay, so the challenges with the charging algorithm, what we want the charging algorithm to do is to, first thing is, we get these energies from either some renewables or from the grid, etc. And we don't want to lose the energy while we charge a battery. It has to be highly efficient. So we want to increase the efficiency of the charging system. Okay. Why we are talking about efficiency extensively here is because we are talking about a huge current, around 100 to 200 amperes or so. So even if the equivalent resistance of the elements which we are using are very small, but still they can cause a large amount of efficiency issues or power loss across it. Okay, so that is a issue here when we think about the efficiency of the charging system. So we should think about some technique to improve the efficiency of the charging system, either by designing good elements in the converter, or by control, or by checking a good algorithm which can do some soft switching techniques, etc. Okay, so all these adds up to improve the efficiency. Next, we are thinking about reducing the charging time, of course, for having a fast charging. And along with this fast charging, we should also aim at enhancing the battery life. So both of these actually contradict each other, because when we go for fast charging, we are demanding a high rate of chemical reactions in the battery, which will deteriorate its battery life. Okay, so when we are demanding something from the battery which will actually affect the battery life. So we have to think about having some kind of a trade-off between the charging time and the battery life, or some kind of other mechanisms which will help in not compromising on the battery life, still maintaining a lower charging time. Okay. Next is protection of the battery, like from some thermal changes and all, which can happen because of this fast charging. So all these are the need of the charging algorithm, and all these appears to be a very huge challenge when we try to do it at a very high current. Okay. So what are the types of charging algorithms which we can use? The one which is most popular is a constant current charging, where we supply a constant current to the battery. Then we can also do a constant voltage charging, which usually comes after the constant current charging, after a certain level of state of charge. Then we can have multi-stage charging, where we kind of change the current levels to different values at different stages. Then pulsed charging is there, which is actually helpful in thermal management of batteries, and trickling part is also there. So we'll see each one of them. So constant current charging, we just apply a constant current to the battery, as you can see here, and the battery gets charged. So this graph is actually plotted not for a battery, it is plotted for a supercapacitor. That is why you see a range of change in voltage from 0 to 2.5. If it is a battery, the voltage will not dip up to 0 here. It will only change from, say, 2 to 2.6 or so. It will not be this much variation in voltage will not be there. So this is a plot which we have made by using a supercapacitor cell and charging it with a constant current. Okay, so we supply a constant current, and the state of charge of the battery increases. So that is, you can see as we increase the current from 1 ampere to, say, maybe 10 amperes here, we can see that the charging time has reduced. Okay, so for constant current charging, the charging time is less, but the problem is with the charging efficiency. So if you see here, as we increase the amount of current, the charging time reduces, but there are chances that the batteries get charged in a pseudo manner. Like, we will feel that it has reached its highest state of charge, but after a while, it may not be so. So it is not completely due to the self-discharge of the battery. It is because the algorithm has given us a false data of highest SOC. Okay, so that we call as a pseudo charge. So that is one problem with the constant current charge. Then we have constant voltage charging, where we can supply a constant voltage to the battery, and it will help in and just like constant current, we supply a constant voltage. So that voltage should be slightly more than the voltage of the battery cell in order to enable the current flow from the charger to the battery. So here we don't have any control over the current which is flowing to the battery. So the current, this is also fast, but the current is not limited. As the current is not limited, the efficiency of this charging system may be low. Okay, so that is only when we think of only having a constant voltage. Then this is a technique which is mostly used, which is constant current, constant voltage charging, where up to certain value of state of charge, we would go for a constant current. After that, it will go to the constant voltage mode, where the current will reduce and the voltage will remain constant. Okay, so in most of the charging techniques, this is followed, and this will enable decrease the pseudo charge problems, pseudo charging problems in the batteries and all. But the problem here is when we go for the constant current part, it charges in a very fast way. But after that, when it goes to the constant voltage mode, where the current is decreasing exponentially, you will see that this time, which it takes in the second mode, is very much larger. Okay, so that is so the charging current or the charging time becomes larger. So that is one disadvantage here. But this is a efficient method of charging. Another thing is way we can charge a battery with a constant current is by using a multi-stage charging, where we can give different values of currents at different stages. So these stages are fixed according to the state of charge of the battery, and this will actually help in reducing that pseudo charge of the battery. So we gradually decrease the current in steps when it comes to different stages. You can see here it is decreased, and then ultimately as it reaches the highest SOC, the charging current will be less. So the charge which it accumulates will be more efficiently accumulated than when you have it for a very high current. Okay, so that is one part, one way in which we can increase the efficiency of the charging. One other benefit of this is to have an increased battery life other than having one constant high current. So when we have a constant high current, we are demanding a high rate of the chemical reactions, and there will be more residuals. It may be lesser efficient at that time, and that will affect the charging, the battery life completely. So we can avoid that by changing the level of current. That is, when we change the level of current, actually we are changing the rate of this chemical reaction. So when we do that, we are actually increasing the battery life. Okay, so if you see from a battery point of view, from a battery lifetime point of view, it is the most efficient part will be there, or most efficient charging scheme will be the one which has the lowest current. Okay, but from the person's point of view, from the user's point of view, we would prefer the highest current for it to be the shortest charging time. Okay, fine. So this is multi-stage charging. This is yet another way of having a charging here. And there is also charging algorithm called pulse charging, where we can give pulsed current between a high value and zero. And this pulsed current can also have multi-stage values. And actually, because in every cycle we are going from high to 0, it will help in good thermal management. Okay, it will reduce the temperature of the battery, and also it will help in increasing the lifetime of the battery. So that are the advantages with such kind of a charging system. But the problem here is that the AC adapters, the charging converters should ensure a current of this pulse shape being fed to the battery. So the algorithm which we use becomes slightly complicated, and the adapter becomes more expensive. Then another thing which usually we do along with the charging, any of these charging, is a trickle charging. That is, after the battery has reached its highest SOC, if you suddenly remove the charger, the self-discharge of the battery will start to happen. So what we can do is to connect the charger for a longer duration, if we can. And what it just does is it will supply the amount of charge which is equal to the self-discharge rate. So that will just compensate the self-discharge of the battery, keeping it at the highest SOC when we try to use it. Okay, so that is called as trickling. And in this, when we do that, we'll ensure the advantage is that we'll get the complete battery energy when we try to use it, and there is no risk of overcharging the battery as well in this case. But the disadvantage is this thing becomes very slow. Okay, so that is one disadvantage here. Now, when we are thinking about charging a battery now, so what are the other options available with the storage of energy? So when we use an electric vehicle instead of an IC engine-based vehicle, the main focus is on the battery system, is because we have to carry that amount of energy which we require to drive a vehicle along with the vehicle itself, right? So the weight of this battery is very large, or the storage unit is very large. It will be around 300 350 kilograms when it comes to a four-wheeler of a medium-sized four-wheeler applications. Okay, so the problem here is that we have to carry this much weight along with the vehicle. So that adds to the total load to the vehicle. So when that adds to the load to the vehicle, it is actually reducing the overall efficiency of the vehicle, right? So we always think about developing the battery technology, one, from the power density point of view. Power density means the time it takes to charge and discharge. So if it has a higher power density, we can charge it in a minimal time. So we want to improve the power density for doing the fast charging. Second is, we also want to increase the energy density of the system, because if the energy density is increased, the weight of the battery will be less, and the overall weight the vehicle has to carry will also reduce, thereby increasing the overall efficiency of the vehicle. Okay, so we always think about either improving the battery technology with respect to the energy density and power density, or thinking about some hybrid or some other technologies which can actually give us this. So the other options screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, madam.
Yes, madam. Yes, madam.
Yeah, fine. I think there was some interruption. Okay. So what we have is to find out some choices for the alternate choices instead of batteries. So we have ultracapacitors, or they are also called as supercapacitors, or they are all called as electric double layer capacitors, ELDC. So this is all the name of synonyms of the same thing, and they can be a good replacement for the battery. Then there has also been researches on ultra flywheels and fuel cells. Okay, so when we come to the battery technology, what are the options available? So we have lead acid battery, metal hydride batteries, or lithium ion based batteries. So the one which is most popular now is the lithium ion based battery, just because of its high energy density and higher efficiency. Also, it has lower self-discharge rate. So they are being used extensively. But if you want to make a very low cost system, we can adapt one of these, in which the cheapest will be when we use a lead acid battery. The problem here is it has a very poor energy density, so the size of battery will increase. But if the vehicle is a low power vehicle, you can prefer using a lead acid battery also to reduce the cost of the vehicle. Okay. The good thing with the lead acid battery is they have a high recycling rate. Okay. Then metal hydride is also preferable because they are relatively safe, and also they have a good power density when we compare it to the other two technologies. They are also being used, but they have long, if you see, they are not suitable for parallel connections. The discharge rate of each of the parallel connected cells will be very much different. You try to make a lot of parallel connection with metal hydride cells, it may not be very well adapted. Okay. So what are the batteries which is used nowadays? If you see the Tata Nexon electric vehicle, which is the one, which is the latest one, they use a lithium polymer battery. So the lithium polymer battery is a variant of lithium ion battery. But the benefit is that it is having, it uses foils as the outer covering instead of having a metallic outer covering. So the weight of lithium polymer battery cells are at least 20 to 30% lesser than that of a lithium ion battery, giving the benefit of having a higher energy density. Okay, so that is the one which is used in Tata Nexon. Otherwise, after say 2000 or 1990s, 1997 or so, the lithium ion battery were the one which are most popular. Okay. Now, before that, lead acid and metal hydrides were used. And if we come to the motor side, it's not the focus of this, but just to understand, the shift has happened from induction motor drive to permanent magnet synchronous motor drives. Okay. So nowadays, PMSM drives are the one which is very much used. And also there has been focus on synchronous reluctant motor drives, which is permanent magnet assisted, which was used in the Tesla Model 3, if you check that. Okay. So when we come to the battery systems, the terminology which we use in most of the vehicle is a range. So the range means in one full charge, how much kilometer the vehicle can run. So for that will actually give us the kind of sizing of the battery or the storage which is there. Okay. So for the latest one, it is the range has increased to around 300 kilometers, and the battery which is used, which is a lithium polymer battery, has a rated voltage of around 320 volt. Okay. Now we come to the other option of storage, which is supercapacitors. So as I have already said, supercapacitors are nothing but an electric double layer capacitor. It is an electrolytic capacitor which has a double layer formation inside it, and which uses nano technology to fabricate the plates of the double layer capacitor. Because of that, what happens is that the area, it gives kind of a porous electrode. So the area of the plates increases to a very large value, so that the farad rating, the capacitance of these batteries are very high. It is of the range of say 3000 to 10,000 farads or so, We can even develop a supercapacitor cell which has a farad rating of 3000 to 10,000 farads. So when we compare it to the normal electrolytic batteries which we are familiar with, they have a farad rating in millifarads or microfarad range, right? So when we compare it with that, the supercapacitors have a very high farad rating, very high capacity. Therefore, it is having a larger energy density than that of an electrolytic capacitor. Okay, and being a capacitor, we can say it is having a larger power density when it compares to a battery. So a battery dynamics may be slow. It may not have a higher power density because a chemical reaction has to happen inside that. But when it comes to a supercapacitor, because it's just a separation of charges which has to happen, it will happen in a lesser amount of time. So that is having a higher power density. So if you, this is called as a Regen plot. So if you see the different kind of storage systems, so it is a plot between the energy density and power density. So what we want ideally is something which can come somewhere here, which will give a very high energy density and very high power density. And if you see the IC system, the storage of an IC engine system is actually falling at this place. So we want all these to move towards this. Okay, we want to move towards this for us to be capable of adapting the storage system, which will replace that of the IC engine. Okay, so if you see here, it is actually having a very high energy density and a very high power density. Okay, now when you come to the battery technologies, they have high energy density, but they don't have much higher power density. When it comes to the capacitors, it has higher power density, but it is not having high energy density. So supercapacitors or electric ultracapacitors or ELDC, they fall in this place where the power density is high and the energy density is also comparatively higher than that of the capacitor. It is lesser than that of the battery, but it is higher than that of the capacitors. Okay, so that is how this has gained a focus now, because we get both. We get high power density and high energy density. Okay, when I'm saying high, I'm still agreeing that it is not as high as that of the battery technology. It has still, there is still space to develop, but still it is high enough when we compare it with the normal capacitors. So the benefit we have when we go to the supercapacitor is it has a very high power density and it has an infinite life cycle. So when you compare it with the battery technology, there is no residue developed when you separate the charges. So the life cycle of supercapacitors ideally is infinite. You can charge and discharge completely infinite times, and it is not going to affect the lifetime of the supercapacitor. But if you see the battery data sheets, it will say these many cycles of charge discharge. That is what it guarantees. Okay, so that is limited in the case of a battery. So lifetime is limited in battery, but lifetime is very high when it comes to the supercapacitors. Okay, and because for the same reason, the maintenance cost is also very less when it comes to supercapacitor. Okay, and it has a good temperature range as well. So these are all advantages, but the main disadvantage when we go for using only supercapacitors as a replacement of battery is the energy density. So we don't get that comparable energy density of that of the battery. So the sizing of the supercapacitors will become an issue. The weight, which was 300 kilograms, maybe if you want to have the same amount of energy stored, you will need something like 500 or 600 kilograms of supercapacitors. So that is one problem which we have when we move to the supercapacitors. But we can think about solving this in one way, which I will discuss. Okay. So now when it comes to supercapacitors as well, unlike a battery cell, the voltage rating is limited for each of the cells. So it is around 2.5 to 2.7 volts. So when we want to connect or when we want to make a supercapacitor bank of a higher voltage rating, we will have to connect a lot of such cells in series. So suppose we want to make a 25 volt supercapacitor bank with the 2.5 volt cells, we'll have to connect 10 such cells in series. Now, if it is 250 volts, we'll have to connect 100 such cells in series. So when we have any series connection, as you all know, that gives a lot of challenges. So one main problem is the reliability issue. If one cell goes bad, the whole string can go bad, right? So out of 100 cells, if one cell goes bad, the other 99 cells becomes inactive, right? So we have to think about some way in which we can get over this thing. Another issue is none of these cells are similar to each other. They all come with a tolerance. So the tolerance of capacitance is around 20%, and that of ESR can be around 100%. Okay. So because of that, what happens is that we will assume the voltage sharing between the cells to be uniform, but that may not be so, right? Because they are not similar. So some of the cells will be carrying a lesser voltage, some will carry a higher voltage. So that will actually give a disadvantage of having underutilized string. So let me just take an example. Suppose I have two cells and they are not similar. So I am just giving 5 volt supply here, and I'll assume that each of these takes 2.5 volts, right? But because of, and that is the rating of these two cells. But because of various reasons, there can be some tolerance or change in the capacitance value. One of the cells becomes, say, 2.4 volt, then the other cell has to be charged to 2.6 volt so that the total voltage is 5. But this 2.6 can cause a damage to the cell. Okay, so we always limit it to 2.5. So what happens then? The overall voltage will become 4.9. And as you all know, half CV square is energy stored in the capacitor. So the V has reduced. So what we are doing in order to avoid the overcharging of the cell, we are actually underutilizing the string. Okay, so all these issues come along when we make a supercapacitor cell. This issue is there with the battery cells as well, underutilization of the string. Now, if you don't do that, if a prolonged overvoltage has happened for the cell, we will have all these issues, capacitance losses, increased ESR. So actually what happens is there is a reduction in the lifetime of the cell. Okay, and if it is not properly checked in between, it can ultimately lead to the failure of the complete system. So mainly because these ultracapacitors, they have an electrolyte which is an organic electrolyte. So they are volatile when it comes to increase in the voltage. So these volatile electrolytes, it will decompose when we give a voltage higher than the rated value to the cell, and that will actually deteriorate the performance of the supercapacitors. Okay. Now this, when I'm saying this issue is also there with the battery cells as well. Okay, so it is not the one with the supercapacitor alone, but now since we are trying to replace the batteries with the supercapacitors, thinking that it can give us some benefit when it comes to fast charging, we are discussing supercapacitors here. Okay, so the same issue is there with the battery cells as well. Okay, same kind of deterioration of lifetime, etc., will happen if you overcharge a battery. So all these issues, balancing issues, are there. When it comes to the balancing schemes, so when we say we are connecting a string of ultracapacitor cells, and as I said, because none of them are similar, the voltage which it shares will become unequal. So when it comes to an ultracapacitor, we are seeing an output like the difference in the voltage. When it comes to a battery, it is a charge which is having an imbalance. Okay, so the state of charge of different cells will be different. So we have to think about some ways of balancing this. So charge balancing. So there are various schemes which are broadly divided into two. They are passive and active. So when I'm saying a passive scheme, it does not have any control technique. So it just connects some resistors in parallel. So if you have two capacitance, and what you just do is to connect resistors in parallel, just like this. And the value of these resistors will predominate over the impedance of the capacitor, so that the voltage balancing is dominated by the value of the resistors, which are more comparable or which are having not much variation when we compare to the variation in the capacitance here. So because of that, we get a good balancing. So there is no need of control. There is no need of any other algorithm to do this. So this is also adapted, if you remember, in the power systems and all, for the balancing technique. Okay, so that is one way. But because we connect the resistors in parallel, the value of resistance will be very large. Okay, so that the current which that parallel resistance takes is less, and the amount of dissipation is less. But still, continuously we are dissipating energy. So these passive balancing schemes are all also called as dissipative schemes. Okay, it can be either resistors which are connected in parallel, or it can also be Zener diodes which are connected in parallel. And if you want to reduce the dissipation, we can have switched resistors. So only for the cells where the imbalance is there, which we can identify through some sensors, we'll connect the resistor. So for the other cells, resistors won't be. So that kind of switched resistors are also there. But all these schemes are dissipative. Then we have non-dissipative schemes, which are called as active balancing scheme, where we don't use resistors. So resistors are mainly a dissipative element. So we don't use resistors. We use some electronic devices like inductors, capacitors, MOSFETs, IGBTs, diodes, etc. Okay, which are not lossy. Okay, they are lossless devices. So when we use that and we try to balance the energy, so the capacitors which is having a higher voltage, the energy from that capacitor will be taken, and it will be distributed among those which has a lesser charge in it. So this kind of taking energy from one and giving it to the other is done by some electronic interface, and that we can use various type of converters to do that, each having its own benefit, and that gives so many kind of active balancing scheme. But the main advantage here is they are non-dissipative. They don't dissipate any amount of energy. Okay, and this is a count of various switches and the core and diodes for each of these schemes. And we have also tried to develop active balancing scheme, which I will discuss now, for the ultracapacitor cells, which we have made and we have tested. And the main benefit of the scheme when it comes to all the others which has already been developed is the reduction in the count number of devices which we use. So this is very important because we are ultimately talking about the energy density of a UC cell, right? So if you cannot reduce the number of switches, windings, or magnetic core, that will actually add to the size of the battery bank. Okay, we can find a solution with lot of switches, lot of windings and magnetic core, but that may not be helping us much because the overall weight of the battery bank will also increase. So along with the switches, we'll need some heat sinks and all, right? So that will all affect the overall sizing of this. So we want to always reduce the number of switches, reduce the number of windings used, reduce the number of magnetic core used, and with aim, a new scheme of active balancing was proposed for supercapacitor cells, and we tried to make a supercapacitor bank with this active balancing scheme, which we are thinking of as one major player to replace the battery technology in the electric vehicle. Okay, so that is the one scheme which I'll discuss now. Now, for the other available schemes, like one based on buck boost converter, what it does is if this UC1 is overcharged and say UC3 is undercharged, then the energy which is extra in UC1 will be taken by this inductor L1, then it will be transferred to this inductor L2, and then it will be transferred to UC3. Okay, so these L1, L2, L3 and all becomes an intermediate storage, and the transition of energy happens from one capacitor to the other in steps. So this has a poor dynamic response. But here, when it comes to a multi-winding transformer based, which share a common core, then we can transfer the energy from any of these cells to any other cell in the one cycle itself. So if B1 is overcharged and B3 is lesser charged, then the energy is taken from B1, it is stored in the magnetic core of this transformer, and then from there it is shifted to B3 through the other switch. Okay, so this is one scheme which is like a forward flyback combination, and then we can also have a similar common core kind of scheme for a half bridge based technology. So here the only issue is the number of battery cells have to be even, otherwise this may not work. Okay, so there are various schemes. So the one which we have proposed is using a buck boost equalizer with a common core being shared by the inductors, and this kind of arrangement is called as a matrix arrangement. So we have a matrix arrangement of supercapacitors, and we use coupled inductor which shares a common core and two switches in between these four cells. Okay, now these coupled inductors are supposed to take the charge in between for a while from the overcharged supercapacitor cells and distribute it among the other cells which are undercharged. Okay, and as it shares a common core, the number of magnetic cores which we require will be less. Okay, so now here if you see, if the upper two capacitors are overcharged and the lower two are undercharged, then the switch S1 is operated. When it is on, the energy is saved in the core of this magnetic field of coupled inductor in the upper cell, and when it is off, that energy is getting transferred to the lower two cells through the body diode of switch S2. So this is one condition. This can actually just you can just inverse it in the other case when the lower two are higher are having higher charge and the upper two are having lower charge. That is just an inverse case of this. Then next is we have the condition where in one of the string, upper one is overcharged and the other string, the lower one is overcharged. In that case, the charge from UC1 will get stored in this inductor L1, and the inductor L2, which was charged in the previous cycle from UC4, will actually now discharge to UC3. So this is discharging to UC3 and this is charging UC1. And the same thing will repeat when you switch on S2. Okay, so so this can also again this can be just vice versa. when UC2 is greater than UC1 and UC3 is greater than UC4. That can just be a vice versa of this. So by just controlling the actions of these two switches in a systematic manner, we can control the energy sharing of the ultracapacitors, and we can actually make a balancing of the total energy among these ultracapacitor strings. So for an n amount of ultracapacitor cells, we can prefer having a system with so if you have n such number of strings here, all these will have a common core, and there will be some n minus p amount of windings here, which will help in doing the balancing. Okay. Now the algorithm, as I said before, which we showed for each of these equalizers that can be followed. The switches which is coming along with the ultracapacitors which are overcharged will just operate in order to shift the energy from the ultracapacitor cells to the core of the coupled inductor and then to the other capacitors. Okay. Now, when we use a coupled inductor in the circuit, I just want to mention one main difference between the coupled inductor and a transformer. So in the other two methods, with the flyback forward type converter and with the forward type converter based systems, there was a high frequency transformer being used for the energy balance. But now we are using a coupled inductor. So the benefit we get when we use a coupled inductor is that we have more of an inductance effect than that of a transformer. That means in the case of a transformer, it is not capable of storing any energy. It will just take the energy, and at the same time, it has to be taken away by the load. It cannot store much. But when it comes to a coupled inductor, which is having similar structure as a transformer but with a higher inductance, it can store the energy. So it's like the difference between the forward transformer and a flyback transformer, where in the flyback transformer there is storage of energy for some time and it is taken away in the next cycle. So because of that kind of a buffering effect of the coupled inductor, they actually help in this kind of an energy allocation for charge balancing. So when we think about designing this converter, how we can design the power rating of this converter. So as I said, this converter is now going to be the part of the energy of the supercapacitor bank of the energy storage element. So we don't want it to have a very high power rating, or we don't want it to be very bulky, though that is one aim which we have. So we have to think about the fixing power rating for this. So how we can do that? We will do that by thinking about the kind of energy which we have, maximum amount of energy which we have to balance. So suppose there is a deviation of plus or minus 20% for the capacitance, then the balancing energy which we will require can be calculated by considering the minimum capacitance and maximum voltage for the maximum energy, and maximum capacitance and the minimum voltage for the minimum energy. So if you see the capacitance which is having the minimum value, that is minus 20%, will be the one which has the maximum voltage. And the other one which has a maximum capacitance value will be the one which has a minimum voltage. So this difference in energy is actually the amount of energy which we have to transfer between the capacitances. Maximum amount of energy which we will have to transfer. Now we know the energy, so we will have to fix the time which we want it to take for transferring this. Now energy by that time, suppose we want the kind of balancing to happen in 1 second, so we will divide the energy by 1 second and fix the power rating. If you want the balancing to happen in a lesser time, then the power rating will increase. If you want to decrease the power rating, we can increase the time. So this time is actually dependent on the charging time we are going to fix. So if we want to charge a ultracapacitor cell in 20 minutes, we won't mind if this T is around 60 seconds or so, because in the 20 minutes duration, the balancing is occurring in 60 seconds, which is quite good enough. But now, if we are aiming to charge the ultracapacitor cells in 1 minute, then we'll have to fix this to a very low value, say 1 second or 10 seconds. So then the power rating of the whole system will be more. So for a fastest charging, if you want to do a very fast charging of less than a minute or so, then the power rating of this converter is going to be very high. But if you want to go for a 10 minutes or a 15 minutes charging, then the power rating of this converter is going to be very small. So if we had done few calculations for a 1 farad capacitor, if the charging time is fixed as 0.1 seconds, then the power rating was coming around 5 watts. And the current which the winding has to handle is around 2 amperes. Okay. Now for a 360 farad capacitor cells with the 20 seconds balancing time, the power rating is coming around 25 watts. And for a 3000 farad capacitor cells with the balancing time of around 12 seconds, the power rating is 125 watts. So when we compare it with the original power of the system, which is coming around 50 to 100 kilowatts or so, when it comes to very heavy vehicles, these power ratings are very small. They just have to do the balancing of the residual energy which is there. Okay, but still, this is our concern, because we have to carry that along with the module itself. But here, if you see, the current which the each winding has to carry for a 3000 farad system is around 50 amperes. So that makes the kind of coupled inductor which we are going to use a bulky one, but the number of turns will be less. So and the core will be same. So that actually helps in reducing the overall size. Okay, even though it appears to be a huge current, but the number of turns will be less. So it won't add to the weight much. Now, some of the simulation results of the algorithm which we have discussed. So one way we can do the simulation is by fixing the duty cycle to 0.5 in the open loop, and just switching the up and the lower switch alternatively. So that is one way we have tried. And in the open loop, for 4 cells and all, the balancing time was slightly higher, but it was not giving much of the steady state error. Okay, with the capacitance of 100% tolerance, that means if one was 1 farad, the other capacitance which we took was 2 farad, and 3 and 4 like that. There was a tolerance of around 100% taken. And then when it comes to a closed loop simulation, the kind of balancing time it takes is very, very less. If you see, it is less than say 10% of 0.1 seconds or so, and the steady state error is very less. Same thing we had tested with the 8 ultracapacitors with open loop. So why we tried for this open loop simulation is that we thought of not complicating the system with a closed loop control algorithm and all, if it can give a good result. But the parasitics of the capacitance and the inductors which we are using is not allowing us to prefer this open loop simulation, because as in other systems, even in this also, it is having a good effect here, and there is a steady state error if you see, and also the time it takes to balance is also more. Now, when it goes to a closed loop simulation, the balancing time is less, and you can see that there is no much steady state error. So if you, with the comparison is for open loop and for the closed loop, the balancing time has reduced drastically, and the steady state error is also reduced. Now, same thing was repeated for a 500 farad capacitance with 8 and 4 cells, and the results, if you see here, are also saying the same thing. We have a better performance when there is a closed loop control. Now, practical also, we try to observe the kind of voltage imbalance with various ultracapacitor cells which we purchased from various vendors. So for green cap, Faradim, and of different capacitance values, the value of the voltages across each of the capacitance were measured. And it was observed that even when we use 100 farad 4 cells, in this way, the farad ratings are same, but because of the tolerance, which or because of the differences in manufacturing of the cells, actually the voltages changed from around 2.48 volts to 3.01 volt across each of the cells when they were just connected in this way without the balancing scheme. Okay, so this just proves the necessity of having a balancing scheme when it comes to our supercapacitors. And same thing, as I said, will be there when it comes to battery cells as well. Now, same way, for a 500 farad 2, there was a variation in the voltage from 2.5 to 2.77. And for a 360 farad Faradim, the variation was from 2.3 to 2.75. So whatever be the make of the supercapacitor. So if you see, the cost is very much different for these three. A Faradim cell actually is the costliest. It is having something like 1,000 per cell for a 360 farad. And this green cap is very cheap. But even if you take a very good technology ultracapacitor cell, it may have other benefits of lesser ESR and all. It has a benefit of lower self-discharge rate when we tried that. So it has its own benefit, but the charge balancing issue is there with all these kind of technologies. And also we tried with the 3000 farad cell, which is Faradim made, and tried to make a battery pack of around 30 volt by connecting 12 such cells in series. And if you see the voltage distribution, here also there is a variation from 2.6 to 2.8. That actually indicates the necessity of having a charge balancing scheme in such cells. So then the hardware implementation of the above mentioned charge balancing scheme was done, and it was giving a good result of having not much variation in the voltages when it comes to the charge balancing. Okay. Now we made a ultracapacitor bank with 12 cells, which was having a rating of around 30 volt, and we have a electric vehicle in our lab, and which is having a lead acid battery in it. Okay. So what we did is to check if the energy of this ultracapacitor cell which is made up of 3000 farad 12 cell capacitors, and if you calculate theoretically when it comes to when we try to drop the voltage from 30 volt to around 20 volts for the 3000 farad cells, 12 such cells connected in series, if you calculate the amount of time it can drive a 250 watt BLDC motor drive, which is there in this vehicle, it comes to approximately 7 to 8 minutes. And we were happy to observe that according the bank actually worked according to our calculation. So what we did is instead of this lead acid battery here, we just connected the we just disconnected the lead acid battery and connected the ultracapacitor cells to the terminals, and tried to make the motor work and check the amount of time this ultracapacitor unit was able to power the motor, and it was around 7 to 8 minutes, which is as per the calculation. Okay, now if you want to increase the amount of time which this is going to serve, One way we can do that is to increase the number of parallels. So we have one string of 12 set cells now, which is giving us 7 to 8 minutes. Now, if you connect one more string of 12 such cells in parallel, then the time will just double. And if you want to further increase the time, you can just connect one more such cells in parallel. Okay, now if you compare the sizing, the battery bank was actually taking this much size here, and here the ultracapacitor bank is only this much. So we can go for more than 2 to 3 strings, which will take the same space here. But we don't have to do that. I will tell you why. We can do well with this one battery, one UC cell itself as a replacement. Okay, I'll tell you why. So this is how we can increase the time. Now just a video of just show this presentation. Video of the vehicle which we have made to run with the ultracapacitor bank alone driving the vehicle. So this is actually giving us validating our idea that we can replace the battery bank with ultracapacitor cells alone. So that gives us a confidence, right? So when what are the benefits we get here is, as I said, the power density of ultracapacitors are very high. So we can charge the ultracapacitor when we compare it with that of a with that of a battery. Okay, it can just get charged in a very less amount of time. So what is the benefit we get here? We have a reduced charging time. Of course, we have that without deterioration of the lifetime of the storage unit. So that is one big benefit when we shift completely to ultracapacitor banks. But one problem which we face is actually with the energy density. We'll have to increase the size of the ultracapacitor bank to make it comparable to this. So the lead acid battery, which is a 135 ampere hour battery in this vehicle which was used, it was actually giving a drive cycle of around 60 to 70 kilometers in one full charge. So to make this ultracapacitor cell comparable to that of this, it will take a size which is double of this. Okay, so that is one main issue with the ultracapacitors. But in many scenarios, we don't want that. Why? Because the time it takes to charge the lead acid battery is around 2 to 3 hours. So if you are spending 2 to 3 hours time to charge the battery, you would want the vehicle to run for at least 80 to 100 kilometers. Otherwise, the charging time, it becomes a very inefficient system, right? But the time it takes to charge this ultracapacitor bank with say 20 ampere battery, 20 ampere current or so, is less than 10 minutes. Now, even if it runs for say 15 or 20 kilometers in one cycle, we can just charge it again and then make it run for a while again. So in certain scenarios where we can have such kind of multiple charging, we can prefer using completely replacing the system with the ultracapacitors. So what is the scenario that we will see? Okay, so the aim of the research, when we think of completely moving towards fast charging, is to completely change the storage unit from a battery unit to ultracapacitor. That actually gives us a direct benefit of having a fast charging. Okay, but usually in most of the systems, ultracapacitors are not used as an individual storage unit. They are used in hybrid with the batteries and all. So the batteries provide a long-term power unit, and the ultracapacitors do the help in giving some boosting of the power whenever that it is required. So that actually enhances the total lifetime of the battery, but that actually does not help much in moving towards a very fast charge, or if you want to do a ultra fast charging and all, does not help when we have a battery in the system. Okay, fine. What are the other challenges? There are many more challenges when it comes to fast charging. That is one, as I said, energy density of UC, and cost is another thing. Another major issue is with the kind of penetration issues which is caused to the main grid when we go for fast charging. We are demanding a very huge current from an AC grid to charge a DC system. And if the power quality is not ensured much, then there can be a lot of issues caused to the grid that can actually deteriorate or actually be a problem to the stability of the grid. Okay. Another thing is if you go for a fast charging, you cannot have an on-board charger. We'll always have go for an off-board charger. Then another issue is there is a voltage dip in ultracapacitor. If you use an ultracapacitor cell, so wide range duty cycle has to be used, and the converters which we use have to handle a larger current. It needs to have a higher efficiency. So as I said, when we go for replacing a battery system completely with an ultracapacitor, it has this disadvantage of energy density. As I've already told, the sizing of the ultracapacitor becomes an issue. But we can actually get over it by thinking of a solution where we try to use it in a kind of a pre-described if we use it in a bus which is transported in a city which has a predefinite stops, and if we have a charging station along these stops, then with the ultracapacitor technology, we can actually reduce the charging time of the system to around less than a minute, which is a time taken by the people to get out of the vehicle and get in. So if the ultracapacitors can be charged in that time, which the ultracapacitor technology is capable of, and if you just have to make the charging station capable of delivering that amount of current, that can happen if you use again an ultracapacitor bank in the charging station. Then if that can be done, then we just have to carry the amount of energy which is required to move the vehicle from one stop to another. We don't have to carry the energy for this one complete movement of the vehicle, right? When we use a battery, we'll think about having 100 or 300 or 400 kilometers of drive in one charge, because that one charging itself takes 1 or 2 hours time. But here, when the charging itself takes less than 1 minute's time, we can think about charging it at every stopover, and that actually helps in making the energy, onboard energy requirement very much less. So that the size of the ultracapacitor bank, when we calculated it for a drive of around 100 kilometers, when it is compared to that of a battery bank, for a battery bank, it was coming around 280 kilograms. And for the ultracapacitor cells, it was coming around 32 kilograms. So the size of that battery, the weight of the ultracapacitor bank has reduced to 32 kilograms. That will again increase the efficiency of the overall system. So that this is actually possible because the ultracapacitors can be charged very fast without affecting its lifetime as well as the number of charge-discharge cycles. Okay, so that is one thing. Now to another thing, which when we try to use ultracapacitor, the main problem is in the batteries, the voltage does not dip much. But in the case of ultracapacitor, the voltage dips because it's a capacitor. So we need to have a converter with a voltage control in between the bank and the vehicle. And this converter needs to operate at a high duty cycle, wide range of duty cycle, and that is one big challenge, which is yet another thing where as a power electronic engineer, we can always contribute. Okay, so with this, I just come to the end of this session. I can take up the questions now if there are any, and we can have a discussion. There are any questions?
Ma'am, good evening, ma'am.
Yeah.
I'm Sheila from Tyagaraja Polytechnic College, Tamil Nadu, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, you have said no capacitor is a self-discharged like that. How do
Yes.
we say, ma'am? Is that at the same time you are mentioned in the self-discharged? Yeah. At the same time you are mentioned in the last slide. If you are using the if you are using the super capacitor or ultra capacitor instead of batteries, we are charging in a particular station. For example, taken as a bus means if you are charging for each station, it will take less than the minute.
Yes.
If there is a chance to self-discharge, or there is a chance, ma'am?
Sheila, I think you have understood it wrong. I did not say that it gets self-discharged. Even the batteries get self-discharged. Ultra capacitors also get self-discharged, but the rate of self-discharge for ultra capacitor is not that high as that of an electrolytic capacitor. So if you're talking about the voltage profile, are you talking about this decrease in this voltage? Sheila?
Yeah, ma'am. Tell, ma'am.
You are talking about this decrease in this voltage?
Yeah, yes, ma'am. You are mentioned here, no, ma'am.
No, this decrease in this voltage is not because of the self-discharge. It is like if you see a capacitor and you are charging it to 100% SOC, that means from 0 volt, it gets charged to say 2.5 volts. Okay. And now if you take out the energy from this by connecting some load, then you see that this voltage will decrease. 2.5 to say 0 volt. But if it is a battery cell which you are using, then the amount of decrease will not be much. If it is a 2.5 volt cell you are using and you are taking out the energy, then maybe the dip is from 2.5 to say 2 volts only. Okay, so that is what this is not the self-discharge. This is the discharge when we are trying to use energy stored in the ultra capacitor. So what we want the load not to feel this kind of variation in voltage, right? So we will use a voltage tightly controlled voltage controlled DC to DC converter in between, so that even when this voltage here changes from say 2.5 to say 0.5 volt or so, here always you see 2.5 volt. Okay?
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah, fine.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon.
Ma'am, please tell about the current profile during the charge of this ultra capacitor.
Current profile. See, ultra capacitors like what we have for normal batteries that can be charged with constant current charging. Now here we can go for constant current up to say certain level of state of charge, which is indicated by the voltage across the capacitor terminals. Beyond that, we can do a constant voltage charging and a trickling like that of a battery. So there is no problem. But the pseudo charge issue, which I was discussing about that of a battery, will be more prominent in the case of ultra capacitors. So if you try to charge it with a 100 ampere current, you will see that the voltage will immediately rise to 2.6 volt. And as you remove that 100 ampere supply, it will immediately come down to 2.3 volts or so. So that is because of this porous electrode. The charge reallocation is a very complicated phenomena. So we will always prefer to have a pulsed multi-stage charging for ultracapacitor bank for it to be efficient. Okay. Does it answer the question? So the charging technique which we prefer for an ultracapacitor will be a pulsed multi-stage charging.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. There are questions in the chat box, I think. Okay. Why does pseudo charging? Is it due to the poor sensing of? No, it is not due to the poor sensing of SOC. It is because of the charge reallocation inside the cell. So, as I said, there are porous electrodes and charge separate the charges which get separated goes and sticks to these pores of the electrode, right? So when we observe the voltage, we will see because of the large separation, we will see that voltage has become very large. But what happens actually is once you remove the charge, the supply of current, these charges will reallocate themselves inside the system, and then that gives the real SOC. So that is why usually after say 90% of the state of charge or so, we prefer to go for constant voltage charging or a reduced current charging to avoid this rate of reallocation. Okay, that is not because of the sensing part. It is because of the technology itself, the cells itself. Can we use frequency control to control DC to DC converter? If we can, it is limitation of using it. See, Arati, can you just elaborate? I am not able to understand. Frequency control method means what? Okay, and I'll just take up the next question while I request Arati to just elaborate. Okay, so there is another question by, I think everyone can read, how to select ultracapacitor. So that is what I said. We have to know. Okay, so that is about the sizing of. So suppose I want to replace a 135, say 120 ampere hour rated battery. So when it comes to a battery system, it's a 125 ampere hour rating with say 8 volt range. Okay, so from here I can get the kilowatt hour of the battery which I want to replace. Now with the same 48 volt, I will now check how much capacitance I need as half into, I'll keep the C as a constant, and I'll take from, say I want the ultracapacitor cells to discharge from 48 volt to say around 20 volts. I don't want to go below 20 volts. So I want it to discharge from 48 volts to 20 volts. So half into C into 48 square into 20 square is the amount of energy we have. This has to be equal to the amount of kilowatt hour we have calculated here. Now the only variable here is C, and you can find out the C required. Now this C is the total C of the string. Okay, so if you want to use a 48 volt ultracapacitor cell, each of having 2.5 volt range, then the number of cells connected in series is 48 divided by 2.5. So this will give the number of cells connected in series. Say, I'll just take it as 2 now. Say it is 24. Okay. Now, if you connect to 24 capacitance of say C1 value in series, then the total capacitance of the string is to C1 by 24. Now this C1 by 24 has to be equal to the C value which we calculated from the energy balance equation. then we will get the value of C1, which is the value of each cell which you have to use. So that gives us the value of capacitance which we have to select. Now, another thing when we go for buying an ultracapacitor is we will see the ESR of the capacitor, series equivalent resistance. So that has to be the less minimal one. And also we will see the kind of tolerance it has. So if it can be plus or minus 10%, that is best. Usually it comes out to be plus or minus 20% or so. Next thing is, we will also see the short circuit current of an ultracapacitor. So that will be something like 1000 to 2000 amperes. So that just helps in giving the kind of power density calculation for the ultracapacitor. Okay, so the capacitance value, the voltage rating, it should be around 2.7 volts or so. If it is higher, it is better. Voltage rating of the individual cells, then the tolerance, and then the short circuit current. These may be the main parameters which we should look in the data sheet of ultracapacitor. Anything else?
What about
Yeah.
application of ultracapacitor in standby operations like solar PV fed PMBDC motor pumping system? We can
Standby operation of?
like a system, just for an example, a solar PV fed water
Yes.
pumping, water
Yes.
pumping system.
Okay, like a right-through operation.
Yes, ma'am. Can we use
Like
it
you want-
in case of battery to provide a stable
Okay. Yes,
current and
yes.
voltage, pumping
Yes.
system?
Yes, yes. We can use ultracapacitor as a replacement of battery there too. But see, when it comes to a pump application where we have a PV supply and all, the amount of charge-discharge cycle which a battery needs to handle may be less. When we compare it with the vehicle system, where if there is a regeneration and all, the amount of charge discharge cycle a vehicle has to handle may be more. So we can replace the batteries of a pump with ultracapacitors. The benefit may be with the kind of dynamics which we can get over. But it won't be a very so there are two things when we go for ultracapacitors. One is the size will be more. Second, the cost will be more. So we'll have to check whether the we really need the advantage of power density and life cycle improvement, which or the increase in the number of charge discharge cycle which we have thought of, whether that is really needed by the system. Only if it is really needed, then we can shift to ultracapacitors. So one very good example is in the case of an elevator lift system. If you replace that right-through power supply with an ultracapacitor instead of battery, that is a very good solution there, because an elevator regenerates in every 1 or 2 cycles, and that the amount of regeneration is huge. So if you use a battery there is a large number of charge-discharge cycle going to happen, and that is actually not, going to deteriorate the lifetime cycle of the battery. Needs more maintenance there. So in such scenarios, if you find that there is a large number of charge-discharge cycle and there is a large number of transition, then we can shift to ultracapacitors. If that kind of a dynamics is not required, as of now, we may not prefer using ultracapacitors there, because that has not grown up. The energy density of ultracapacitor is not that high as that of a normal battery, and also the cost is high. So because of these two reasons, for PV applications, especially because it does not require a very high dynamics. The sun does not change in a very high rate. Insulation does not change in a very high rate. We don't much prefer ultracapacitors.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, if there is no other question, we will conclude the session. So hope that there is no more question from participants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yeah. So with this, we come to the end of this today's session. I would like to thank Dr. Sri Lakshmi on behalf of all the participants, on behalf of myself, and on behalf of the FDP. We extremely thank her for her wonderful session on charge balancing issues related to ultra capacitor. I hope that the session was more live and all the participants have enjoyed. Hope that they also will try to be benefited based on the lecture what she delivered. So thank you, Sri Lakshmi.